course, Africa has significant developmental challenges, but at the same time, it's a commercial opportunity. We've seen in the last decade and a half or so, Africa's robust, high-growth economies, underwritten by strong commodity prices, being increasingly attractive to capital, to global capital. Today we've been talking about multinational capital, South African capital, domestic capital being generated and creating winning companies out of high-growth economies. So what is Africa? Is Africa the next Asia? Maybe it's not the next China. China's very much of a different case, but is Africa the next India? Very dissimilar. Poor infrastructure, governance is often a challenge, but rising middle class, a billion-strong regional sort of population that Africa has. India not too dissimilar. Tough business environment, but high corporate profits. India, Africa are very similar. Developmental burden and commercial opportunity. We need to see African governments differentiate themselves by more competitive policy, i.e. who is becoming more attractive to capital, who's providing them with a greater the environment that's more conducive to capital, the ease of doing business, etc. Countries like Rwanda certainly stand out in terms of being able to create that conducive environment, ease of doing business, more attractive to capital. Countries like Tanzania, at least in recent weeks of a political shift. Countries like Nigeria in recent times, starting very slowly to turn a corner, albeit of incredibly challenging fiscal headwinds currently. So the need for structural reform is imperative now by African governments to differentiate themselves from what is often incorrectly cast as this is the African economy. Well, it's not. There's no such thing. There's individual countries within the continent. What differentiates one from the next? That's the imperative of policy in Africa currently. I think the general trend for me is, can Africa grow in a low commodity price environment? And will these economies still be regarded as emerging despite these somewhat subdued growth rates, largely due to some would argue low, but also normalized commodity prices, think oil. So the headwinds, certainly countries like Nigeria, which 2 years ago was lauded as the single largest GDP, single largest economy on this continent. Angola was ranked number 3. These countries currently are hemorrhaging GDP, very difficult business environments, very challenging for businesses to operate in these countries. So for me, the key trend is we're starting to see the shift in the center of gravity of growth away from West Africa toward East Africa, largely resource poor, except for agriculture. And I think that ultimately the winning economies in Africa, I would argue, would be the resource poor ones, not the resource rich ones. Ultimately, the only resource you need is human capital, generated domestically or attracting it from abroad. I think the political changes, the very bold political changes that's happened post-elections in Tanzania toward the tail end of last year have been dramatic, astonishing even. Who would have thought? And very positively received. I think that's a very positive first step towards reform, rooting out corruption, creating more public sector efficiency and a more enabling environment for business. I think that's a very early, good first step. I think secondly, in Tanzania's benefit here is to be part of an East Africa region, the most progressive region on the continent towards regional integration, freer flow of capital, goods, talent, services, and that will hold it in good stead. I think thirdly, and the big story coming down the line, is that of offshore gas. As that starts to come on stream in a number of years' time, Tanzania really could have a significant sort of financial boom from that. And that providing that money is managed correctly, is well governed, and is channeled towards deeper development in the economy, Tanzania, I think, could have a very bright future. I think the medium term, short to medium term will be tough. It is globally, increasingly, for majority of emerging market, frontier market economies. Whether you're in China, whether you're in Brazil, whether you're in Latin America, whether you're in Southeast Asia, it's tough times. We have to understand that. Countries now have to work to grow. Those countries that have successful, functioning political economies, i.e. those that are agile, are very pro-business, non-ideological, and have good governance ultimately, those are the countries that will progress and succeed. Some countries I mentioned will figure out, some unfortunately will fall by the wayside, and those states will be failed states. Africa will have a mixed bag. states need to provide that enabling environment for capital, be very pro-foreign capital, pro-foreign foreign investment into the country, need to be politically consistent, policy consistent, and ultimately we must think of a country as a corporation and not run in too dissimilar fashion. The models reside in Asia, whether it's from South Korea, China to an extent, certain Chinese provinces, Singapore, Malaysia from industrialization story from commodities. There's many models one can look at. I think the countries now, we're seeing it progressively in Africa, which are making doing a relatively good job. Botswana, good governance story. Rwanda, agile, landlocked, small African state, doing very well. Ethiopia, the fastest growing economy globally in 2016. Certain countries are doing a fantastic job. Mauritius, another African economy, very agile. We have domestic, local success cases in our own neighborhood. Other African states need to learn from those as well.